Everyone, we're really excited to have Etgar Keret with us for Times of Israel Behind the Headlines. As many of you will know, Etgar Keret is a leading voice in Israeli literature and cinema, with his books published in more than 46 languages, and his writing published regularly in the New York Times, the New Yorker, Le Monde, The Guardian, the Paris Review. He lives in Tel Aviv. He lectures at Ben Gurion University of the Negev as a full professor, and over 100 short films have been based on his stories as well as feature films. His latest collection, Fly Already, won Israel's prestigious Sapir Prize, as well as the National Jewish Book Award. Etgar, welcome to the Times of Israel. We're happy to have you. We're here, of course, to talk about your very, very latest production, which is the short film that is based on a story that you wrote for the New York Times Magazine. Just to give a little bit more information, the New York Times Magazine asked 29 authors to write new short stories inspired by the pandemic and by Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron, which was written in the 14th century in plague-ravaged Florence. And Caitlin Roper, who was the editor, the leading editor on that project, she said in an interview with you that whenever she needs interesting and potentially weird fiction, she calls on Etgar Keret, which I thought was a great line. So with enough from me, let's hear a little bit from you about the outset of this very short story of 500 words, right?
Yeah, the story was a story that I've written, I think maybe on the first day after the quarantine.
Wow.
And then and I think that during the quarantine, I kind of fantasized about getting back to normal, going to the street, buying stuff, meeting people. And when I came out, I realized that it was nothing like my fantasy. I kind of idealized it in my mind, but really when I live very close to Dizengoff Street, and when I went there, and people on little scooters almost kind of hit me, going really fast, and people were speaking very loud on their cell phone and not keeping space and stuff. And my first instinct was a little bit like a turtle who got his head out of his armor and says, "Oh, that was a wrong move. I want to go back." So after 10 minutes, I just returned home. Wow. And I kind of sat down and I started writing this story. And what happened was that the story kind of circulated, mostly among Tel Avivian friends of mine, and it reached.
Wait, Etgar, you wrote it in Hebrew first.
I wrote it in Hebrew first, and it was translated by Jessica Cohen to English. And what happened was that it got to the Israeli cultural attaché in Japan. And right. He showed it to Imbal Pinto, a brilliant Israeli choreographer who really liked it. And Imbal offered me to do some kind of a collaboration. And because it also came from Ari Rosen, the diplomat from Japan. Attaché. So it became kind of the constraints to the project was that it was Imbal and me doing it together. So it had to be like both a movie and a dance. I would kind of pull more to the storytelling and she would pull more to the movement, and we would find kind of a way to collaborate. And also, we were supposed to have Japanese working with us because it was right. Initiated by the attaché from Tokyo. And I think that there was everything about those constraints just kind of made me kind of more creative, because for me, I think my comfort zone is to express myself or have my characters express themselves by speaking. And suddenly in this kind of dance mode, then I had to find a new way.
Right.
And because we wanted to do something about the pandemic and about loneliness and need to interact, and also with some kind of human alienation, then the fact that except for Moran, who played in Tel Aviv the woman in the movie, we had the Mirai, who whom we had to shoot in Japan, like we had to direct him through Zoom, and who could not be with her in the same space, which was a constraint that was good for us, dealing with quarantine. And also the fact that she's Caucasian and he's Japanese, and they don't speak the same language, and they look different. It kind of added to this kind of, let's say, table who deals with two strangers meeting and trying to interact. And from there on, it was really a big adventure, because I think we all had to step out of our comfort zone, doing stuff that we're not used to, and also basically we wanted to initiate a project, because the feeling with the pandemic was that that everybody the cultural world was frozen. There were no budgets, there were no programs, nobody was shooting. So the whole idea of even making something, made us kind of do stuff that, at least for me, I hadn't done, in 30
before.
30 years. It's like the furniture in the movie, my late mother's furniture.
It's this. I just want to tell our viewers, if you haven't seen it yet. And by the way, it's called Outside. I think I forgot to mention that. The furniture is this grayish green metal, and it's all very monochrome. And you feel like she's literally has the walls closing in on this monochrome space. Sorry, go on, Etgar.
Yeah. So my mother's furniture were white, but we colored to the right color. And in that series there is a scene in which the walls are moving. So Shira, my wife, and Moran's partner came and pushed the walls because we didn't have a crew to do it.
Oh, really? That's how you did it?
And also a lot of people, and and the like Mishkenot Sha'ananim and the foreign ministry all helped in the way, but we still needed more money for the camera equipment and for everything. And basically I found myself for the first time in my life kind of going to commercial companies and asking them if they would be willing to support us. And the first time I did it, they say, "Why should we support you? It will not help us sell our products. Go away." And I said, "Oh, they have a point." But I kept on trying, and then I got to a fashion company called Factory 54. 54. And basically, they just say, "Wow, that sounds like a good idea. Okay, we'll give you guys some money and go and make it." And so it was kind of a first for me in
everything.
Many ways. Yeah.
Wait, Etgar, let me ask you a question. You mentioned how it's your first time collaborating with Inbal Pinto, the choreographer, and of course she's well known in dance circles, and you're obviously well known in literary fiction circles. And you have done a lot of collaboration on film with your wife, with other people, with in all kinds of projects. Dance is such a different medium. And of course, when you read the story online, and by the way, it is available through the New York Times, and the film is available on the Outside website. We'll post it at the end. But what was it like for you to pick and choose and really devote yourself to this other medium, to choreography, to dance, and to a very different way of telling a story? You mentioned it. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit on it.
Yeah, well, I think that for me, when I collaborate with people, and I must say that it took me time to find out, I think that the best collaboration are basically really come when you work with people who are very different from you. That you appreciate their work, they're super talented, but what interests them and what interests you is not exactly the same thing. And then basically, when you collaborate, you have to find kind of this meeting place. I think that when I collaborate with people who are too similar to the way that they think, it's kind of it's always micromanagement. Oh, this punchline could be better. But when you work with somebody who's really a word apart, then it's much more of a challenge. And here, for example, with the story we've adapted was a very psychologistic story.
Yes,
and in a sense, hyper-realistic. Because the situation is absurd, but the way that it's portrayed, it's very much like, a first-person narrative of somebody who lives in a real world. And when we want to adapt it, because I know Inbal's work very well, I said to her, let's make out of it like kind of a COVID fable, a kind of a pandemic fable, and let's do this kind of Alice in COVID land thing. Let's let's deal with all the topic, keep the subject, but wrap it in a wrapping that will create a better interface, to Inbal's word, because Inbal's word is very, very elaborate and very, very unique, and it always deals with something that kind of feels like a fairy tale. And the idea of kind of a COVID fairy tale kind of makes sense, because I think that in fairy tales there's always some kind of a dark element, a scary element. It could be the wolf in the forest or whatever, but there's always something kind of a little bit scary, and it kind of helps you go take a step to the allegorical, because and for me the idea was that if we're adapting it, it has to be totally different from the story, because if it's the same, it wouldn't make much sense.
Right,
and,
it wouldn't make sense.
and I think that the ideas that we had in mind was that basically in real life, I think that Inbal is a little bit like Alice in Alice in Wonderland. Very, very strong. She has this kind of intelligent naivety, this kind of feeling of competence that even if she doesn't know something, she can learn and make it. And with me, I'm a little bit, I would say, the cross between the rabbit and the Mad Hatter. I talk a lot. I'm all over the place. I don't remember what I said 5 minutes before, So I think that the characters are a little bit our alter egos. And Mirai, who plays this kind of Mad Hatter,
inside the TV,
he's inside the TV, and he's supposed to be some kind of a government official who talks to the people and communicates the situation and seems to be confident, but at the bottom line, he's just trapped inside this box that makes the television. And at the same time, he's also in pain and feels greater anxieties maybe of the audiences. And when I talked to the actor, I found myself speaking to him a lot about Bar Simantov, who was the
Barsi, yes.
Barsi, who was I think the CEO, the head of the Ministry of Health.
The Director General of the Health Ministry, right.
And we would see him live explaining to us what we should do. And always it seemed to me that he was trying to look confident, but was a lot more stressed and a lot more afraid and a lot more pessimistic than all the viewers together. It's like kind of this feeling that, that we should be, all of us in TV, making Barsi relax, we should be just saying,
it's okay.
Drink a glass of water. So it's really, really interesting when we talk to a Japanese film star in Tokyo and explain to him, about the guy.
I can't even imagine.
And he very quickly got it. He said, okay. He said, in Japan we have different codes, but I can understand the psyche of this guy. And
right. I also, I loved how there were all the elements of Corona closure, like the flower, how she's playing piano in flower, alluding to all the baking and that everyone is doing, or sleeping on the kitchen table, and how no one knows what time it is at any time of day because you're inside your house. Is it Tuesday? Is it Monday? Is it Sunday? Things that were just so familiar to everyone, I think, who's undergoing this situation through the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that there's something about the social structures that kind of normalizes us. There kind of stuff, I don't know, if you pick your nose in public, people will look at you, so you stop doing it because you feel you're doing something wrong. But if you're alone, you can pick it for hours and
no one knows.
Yeah, nobody would challenge that. And I think that there was something in this long quarantine that we allowed ourselves to do all kinds of things that we wouldn't normally do, and in this sense, there was something both kind of crazy but also liberating in it. And and I think that for me, the time of the quarantine and the pandemic in general, it reminds me something that my late father once told me, that when I referred to his youth during the Second World War, I said to him, this must have been a very bad period in your life. And he said to me, son, there are no bad periods and good periods in life. You have difficult periods and easy periods. And in the difficult ones, you usually learn more about yourself. And I think that when looking at that, I felt that this was a difficult period, you know, both like, you know,
Right.
I have a background illness, I'm asthmatic, so of course, like it was a little bit more scary for me, you know, the pandemic. So it was difficult, you know, to earn a living, you know, many things. My space was limited, but at the same time, I think there was something very, very liberating kind of feelings that the force of inertia in my life was kind of stopped, you know, and this kind of
Right.
feelings that when you sit down and write, for me at least, you know, because I write short fiction, I sit and I say, okay, there's nothing, I have nothing to do. What am I going to do now? And I'm kind of reinventing something, or not reinventing, inventing something. Like I say, okay, how about I write about a hired killer who wants to adopt twins? And you know, and you kind of, it's kind of you have to make up all all the ingredients that will make you laugh and cry for the next few hours. And there was something that in this pandemic situation that pushed me there, because it's quarantine, and it's not like, you know, somebody had submitted the TV series from you, so
Right.
you go to a meeting. You can do whatever you want, and it kind of reconnected me with the first time in which in which I began to write was during my compulsory army service, when really nobody was interested in what I was doing.
You were writing.
I was also in an isolated environment because I was
Mm.
in a place where totally isolated without windows, working in shifts in a computer unit in the army. So I really felt that since then I wasn't as prolific, you know, both kind of writing a lot and having many ideas, and in this kind of all this work that mostly consisted of from writing fiction and non-fiction, suddenly I had this opportunity through Inbal's offer to do a collaboration and to work with other
Wow.
people, and in circumstances that were, you know, like totally different. We shot everything in a rehearsal
Did
room.
you two worked, when did you start working on the film? I was curious about that because you said that you were in the same room together, obviously. So
Yeah,
you started working together in June,
uh,
May?
in May, I think around, yeah,
May.
mid-May. In mid-May,
Was that
we
your,
first met,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
basically, from then when we met, we started working, and about, like, you know, a few weeks later, I said to Imbal, I know that everybody's volunteering and people are helping, we don't have enough money to do it. And then Imbal looked at me, she said, but it's such a great opportunity, we should find a way. And I said, okay, and basically, you know, this was when I started knocking on doors, and this is when Factory
Right. Right.
one Mishkenot stepped in. But it was really like, it was one of the quickest processes I remember.
That you've ever had in terms of a
Yeah.
project. And Japan, you said that you were rehearsing on Zoom. Can you try and describe what that is like? I mean, I
Yeah.
can't even. It's so many you know, moving parts. How did you do? Were you and Iqbal on the same Zoom and they were on their own Zoom? How did that
Yes,
work?
yes, we were always together, sitting together, and basically it's not only the rehearsal. Actually, I think the rehearsal we did through WhatsApp, and the shooting we did through Zoom, when basically, you know, somebody in Japan kind of a I don't know, glued, you know, his laptop in such a angle
Oh,
that
like on a wall?
on the monitor, so we can see the
Oh,
monitor. But of course, you know, it's Zoom, and it's kind of we didn't, sometimes we didn't have a good connection, and sometimes the angle wasn't all right, so we couldn't exactly see what was happening. So I think it was really like, you know, we had to kind of let go, which is something I think that is tough for Brian and me, and basically mostly explain ourselves and trust Mirai, who's an amazing dancer and
right.
the actor, to interpret it and to do and to kind of to take more responsibilities than he would have needed to take in a normal
Right.
setting.
The teacup on her face. That is when the teacup, she finds it stuck to her eye, and then she takes it off. There's some really great moments in there where she's
Yeah,
expressive without a word.
yeah. So the idea was that with Moran working in Israel, it was much easier because we were in the same space,
Right.
and you know, and for example, you know, and a lot of things like the teacup, you know, we did it with magnets, you know, so it's really like
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of because usually if you put a teacup like here,
It's gonna fall off. Right.
and
Right.
we had to find all kinds of solutions to kind of give this fantastic subjective feeling. But with Mirai, Mirai for the entire dance, he's confined inside a box
Inside a box.
in
Right.
the proportion of a TV, because he's kind of a TV personality who discovers that he's trapped inside a TV and can't go out.
Right.
Like it's his own quarantine. So with him, the advantage was that he really didn't have many objects and he was confined to a small space, because it was also something that was helpful for us when we directed him, because we didn't need to know
You
the
didn't have this
entire
big
space.
stage.
Yeah. And I always believe in constraints. I always believe that really the constraints usually they just focus you and help you reach the results that you want. When you have all the options in the world, it's pretty confusing.
I'm curious about something that you said about raising the money for the project. Here, just for our viewers, here in Israel, obviously, there's been these ongoing protests, mainly pushed by performing artists, by restaurateurs as well, by people who are very, very badly affected by the coronavirus. They're protesting against the government. They're saying, when are we going to be able to do what we do, which is perform on stages, whether they're actors or musicians, opera singers, you name it. And obviously writing is a very different kind of art. It's the kind of thing that you can do anywhere. And in a sense, this project, I imagine, has occupied your time for a lot of the pandemic, or a good chunk of the pandemic, as well as other projects that you might be working on. I'd just like to hear your thoughts about it, about what people are saying. This is the end of culture, or we're never going to see it again the way we used to. How do you look at it? How do you view what is going on now on the streets of at Balfour Street outside the Prime Minister's residence?
I've demonstrated in Balfour, so I've been there and I know this place and this vibe. But I want to say that basically the feeling is like, I don't know, sometimes you have those westerns when you have this kind of a sleeky card player who cheated, who got somebody pregnant and stole money from the other and did that. And they all kind of gang, around his house, and they want their money back, So I think this is a very strong Balfour feeling, because you have people there who demonstrate because of the fact that culture doesn't exist, in our sphere. It's not only the people who don't have money, but it's that all of us, that we're not exposed to any kind of culture. There are no initiatives. There are no way to kind of create new and relevant culture. And this is why kind of in Bal and me have to do it guerrilla style. But I think, and and there are people from restaurants who can make a living, and the system here is really, really indifferent to the trouble, and there are self-employed people who don't get support. Okay, that's okay, but I think that the scope is much greater than that, because I think that fundamentally we talk about ethics. There are many people who don't want, somebody who has to go on a trial to be the prime minister while trying to affect, the judicial system and doing stuff, because if you think about it, prime minister is the presenter of our country, Now, if I would sell a pair of sneakers and my presenter had to go on 3 trials, and he would incite against Arabs on election day and incite against left-wingers saying that they forgot to be Jews, and his wife would be indicted 3 times in mistreating the people who work for her, and his son would be recorded offering that he gives ex-girlfriend to guys for money, in a reality in which a 16-year-old girl was raped in Israel by 30 people. So I would say that, that Nike or Adidas or whatever company would say, we don't want this guy as a presenter. He doesn't represent our value, he doesn't represent it. And I want to say that, that when I go to Balfour, I always see guys with yarmulke holding signs saying, you don't represent the right wing, you don't represent our values. And, next to it, you see people who will say justice for Riyadh, because he's a Palestinian who got shot by by the police, and there is something very, very slow and
about
way
that
that
story.
we investigate. And then next to them, people say justice for Salomon Taka, who's an Ethiopian guy who was shot by the police. So the idea is that I think that a lot of people there come with very, very specific issues. And to be honest, the only way we can transcend as a society is to understand that justice cannot only be for us. I mean, if I say,
You mean personally?
Personally, just help me with culture and I don't care about the restaurants, or help both of us and I don't care about the fact that my prime minister says about 20% of the population who are Arabs, they are going in buses to vote, the same way that anti-Semites who talk against Jews in Europe, then I don't care about that. Leave the Arabs, just help the Ethiopians. No, leave the Ethiopians, just help, the women. Right. So I think that, justice is not like a piece of cheese that you buy in a deli and you say, cut it here or cut it here or cut it here. It's either justice for everybody or for nobody. And I think that in this situation, when you have somebody that in the past 20 years breaches contracts with everybody, I mean, I see how the ultra-Orthodox keep supporting a guy who went on live television to tell people that he had cheated on his wife, and that his son goes to strip clubs in which he was recorded, and and that he keeps lying in a way that he sues a lot, for slander. And if I can say here while recording this guy is a liar, knowing that there's no way that he can sue me because I can prove that he's not always telling the truth and he doesn't keep his agreements, then I'm saying we have a problem. We are a brilliant state, with high tech and with a Jewish heritage and with everything. And I'm saying, I think that among 8 million plus people, we could find somebody who would be a better, more ethical presenter for our country.
Etgar, as we head to summing this up, where does all of this take you now? You personally, you've worked on this project. It's been something I imagine personally and professionally meaningful for you in this period. I know you're always working on something. Where do you go now with all of this as we head into the fall, still in the pandemic, as we look what's happening in the streets of Israel and with the government? Where are you? What are you doing now?
Well, it depends. For me, it's kind of separated. What do I do as an artist and what do I do as a citizen? As a citizen, right. I do what I think that anybody who advocates democracy would do. I demonstrate. Even though I'm scared of the pandemic, I demonstrate because I want to show that I have a standing. I want a better future for my son. It's really like I want to live in a reality. The questions are not always if it's legal or illegal, but if it's if it's ethical or if it's good or bad. As an artist, I all the time I keep writing because I guess maybe dealing with reality is too much for me. So my way to deal with reality is to throw this curve both through fiction and recently I've started working more and more about on the TV series. I kind of discovered this medium and it really excites me. My wife Shira Geffen and me, we finished a French TV series called The Middleman, which was screened in Arte and now it will be in Israel in Cellcom TV. And
tell us a little bit about it. What's the concept?
It's about a failing real estate agent that when his mother dies, he discovers that he inherited a building in a slum, and he doesn't understand how his mother got that building. And by trying to kind of make a killing out of this building, he gradually starts to learn things about his mother and her past, and basically what had made him this kind of a grumpy loser that he had became. And it's very fantastical because, for example, he gets legal counseling from a talking goldfish. He can move through time. So it starts realistic, but suddenly kind of goes.
It drifts into Etgar land, into Etgar Keret land.
Yeah.
Do you find as you're working on things now that you allow the coronavirus and COVID to go in there, or you push it away and you work as you would normally work? Meaning outside was affected by exactly what was happening at the start of the pandemic and how you were feeling about it. And I imagine helped along by this commission from the New York Times. I don't know where it all played in, but
yeah, it's well, I think that, you know, when I write, I don't write with a plan. There is something like, it's very much a kind of a reflex. And I want to say that, you know, among the stories that I've written a story about the end of the world and people fighting over toilet paper in supermarkets, and I've written this outside story, and I've written a non-fiction piece about how I try to talk to my wife that in case in which I die from corona, that she try not to cry while I'm dying and wait until I die. You know, it's like, and I wrote a story about a guy who, for his wife's 50th birthday, he's able to get an asteroid named after her, and this asteroid hits Earth. You know, so I think that there is something looming back there, and I really feel that again, you know, when you write, what you seek is authenticity, and your biggest enemy is the force of inertia. And I think that there's something about the pandemic that kind of neutralized the force of inertia. We don't get up and do what we did yesterday and the day before that. We get up and need to reinvent ourselves in so many ways that it actually promotes a creative thought and thinking about a situation and universes that I wouldn't have thought of if everything would go in a normal way.
okay. And last question, are you going outside to do your errands like you used to? Are you able to sort of go back to the smaller things that you did, or it's just too different for you these days?
Well, I think that I do some of them, but I think that actually the situation taught me that others are redundant. You know, one example is I really love giving book events, like readings and stuff, and
right.
And I would say that normally I would travel every month, you know, either to Europe or to North America or China or Japan. But every month I would have at least one trip. I think that maybe a third of each year I spend traveling.
You travel.
And here for the last 6 months, you know, I stayed home, and I kind of realized that, you know, that okay, I miss it, but I said, okay, when I return to it, I don't have to travel that much. You know, I can travel less. And now that I'm conscious about the alternatives and about the fact that, you know, I can Zoom or I can do an interview through mail, and I say, you know what, like, I want to travel, but not as much as I used to.
Got it. Etgar, thank you very much. We're always happy to hear your thoughts. Wishing you a Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, toda. Bye.
Take care.